cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Customer, clientele. I was broke, that was last year. Getting money like a cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Benjamin, nothing less. I was broke, that was last year. Don't change on me. I never switched up. Been down since day one. Stay social. People change on me.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dope Black Thoughts Live. I'm Stephania, and we are in our second week of Women's History Month, and I have some fabulous women here on with me today. We have two wonderful Colorado attorneys, power hitters in Colorado. We have Linda Lee, who is a family law attorney and criminal attorney, and we also have Jamie Cowen, who is a criminal defense attorney, personal injury, and also a realtor. Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for
coming
having
on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure. I want you both to just start off by introducing yourselves and telling us, giving us a more in-depth view of your area of practice and where you practice. Let's start with you, Linda.
Thank you. First, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. My name is Linda Lee. I am a former prosecutor who went into politics briefly. After that, I opened my own law firm back in 2009, and I've been practicing criminal defense and family law ever since. So,
where were you a prosecutor?
Adams County.
Okay.
With Jamie, actually.
Yep, I remember, Jamie. You were in the 17th. So tell us about your law firm right now.
Mine?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. So I also do criminal defense and personal injury located in Cherry Creek, but I practice everywhere. So I've been to all kinds of courthouses all over the great state of Colorado. Spent 5.5 years at the district attorney's office in Adams County and have been out now for almost 12 as a defender. And I got my real estate license last year, so having a little bit of fun trying to sell these houses.
In this crazy market, yes.
Insanity.
Yeah. That's the topic for a whole nother show. We'll get to that. So tell me, ladies, how do you like where we are in Colorado with our justice system? What is your overall bird's eye view?
Do you want me to?
Yeah, either one.
Go ahead, Jamie.
So the problem I see currently is that we have a lot of politicians running different DA's offices. And what you need are attorneys running DA's offices, because when you make political decisions, there's segments of the community that are left out of that. If people want to seem tough on crime, then there's kind of a one-size-fits-all approach to the criminal justice system. And Linda and I know this. No case is the same. No facts are the same. Everything is different. But when you have a bunch of people that are trying to get to their next step as opposed to focused on this step, then that's all that they're looking at is the end goal. So whoever needs the services really isn't getting those services. A person who should maybe go to diversion isn't even looked at for diversion. They're getting hit with a felony, right? Or they're getting hit with prison very early. The amount of charges that I'm seeing I don't even want to talk about the I-70 case, but I will, because it is one that really got under my skin in terms of charging decision.
Yeah.
Politically motivated charging decision to ensure that young man went to prison. And that is not how the law is supposed to be used. You were to punish conduct, not to get feathers in your cap. But we see it now more, and Linda can speak to this too, because we came from a very different office, and then we're both in an office when it turned into a political direction. And once it went political, then you're not concerned about the community anymore. And what I find myself saying to DAs all the time is, when you stand up and say your name on behalf of the people of the state of Colorado, that also includes our clients.
Right.
It's not just the other people. And sometimes I think that gets lost.
Linda, did you want to add to that?
Oh, I have plenty to add. I definitely feel that the criminal justice system is problematic in so many ways. And number one, I think I deal with, and I'm sure Jamie does as well, deal with the fact that there is this minimum mandatory sentencing. It's a problem, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed through our legislature. And this really dates back to the crime bill that Biden actually put in effect and created the habitual sentencing. And you can have a case where you should be going to trial, but because the DA is so is knows that you'll go to trial, I'll just put it that way, will add the habitual criminal charges. So now my client is facing 3 times as much as what the minimum is, 3 times as much as what it could have been. So it goes back to charging decisions. I do think it's political, but I think that it could be political in a way where if our legislature would step up and actually make some changes to this habitual sentencing laws. One thing is consecutive sentencing, and that's a problem. The consecutive sentencing is a problem. The minimum mandatory sentencing is a problem, and it gives you the chance. I know recently there was my client and a co-defendant. The co-defendant took the deal. Me and my client, we went to trial, and it was luckily not guilty on all charges, but they still did a minimum. He was facing 65 minimum in jail, 65 years in prison. So if we wouldn't have went to trial, it worked out in that case for us to go to trial, but it doesn't always work out, and it also forces a lot of people to take deals that they wouldn't normally take. And I think it really bears down to there's an uneven distribution of justice, in my opinion.
For sure.
You get certain judges who will give you a fair sentence. You get other judges who are going to sentence your client beyond belief. Some who won't even accept a plea deal. They won't. You got to plead open. So you never know what you're going to actually get, and you might have some DAs who are reasonable and fair. Case in point, right here, we were reasonable and fair. However, you may have other DAs who are not reasonable and fair, and who aren't even that good in trial, but they know that they have the power. They have the power to give you the deal that they want to give you. They have the power to bitch your client if they want to, and I mean by that habitual sentencing. So there's a lot of problems, and I think I definitely echo what Jamie said about it being politically driven, and the politics of it is very nasty, quite frankly. So I think we have a lot more when you have somebody who's in there. That's why what we do is so important, right? Because you need somebody who's going to go in there and fight for you and fight on your side and say, you know what, I'm not going to let you become another victim of this system, because that's what I see over and over and over again. Whether it's you have public defenders who are overwhelmed with too many cases, they can't handle it. And so sometimes they'll take a deal when they should have went to trial. That happens. But I applaud public defenders. I think they do a wonderful job. And I think that, they get a bad rep, and that's not fair. But I think the fact of the matter is that they're overworked, and that's just the reality. And we have a lot of people who basically are the victims of that as well. So I think the
community, and that should be said, that there are community members who are the victims of that. I want to touch on something that you just mentioned. Do you find that you, as a woman of color, have a harder time trying to get your point across and get things done in your respective positions? Do you think that your color hampers a lot of the things that you try to do?
Oh, 100%. 100%. When I started, I'll start with my DA career. Okay. I was the 3rd Black district attorney ever in Adams County. I was the only Black district attorney in Adams County when I started, and the only female. So that voice in the county court. So that voice got lost a lot. And there were more eyes, which Linda can speak to as well, on what I was doing, even though my background qualified me, I think, to sit with people and say, I understand your situation because of my mother had to make decisions like that. Am I going to drive my car and I have no license to get to work, or I'm going to pay some bills, right? They didn't have that, but that voice got shut down. Oh, Jamie's soft on crime. Jamie doesn't do enough trials. No, Jamie goes to trial the things that she should go on. Then as a defender, people tend to kind of push you around until you're loud about it. And Linda can speak to that, but I've been in jurisdictions. I was in Gunnison Court and I came out, and there's a victim viewing room where you can't see in, but they can see you. And there was a group of officers in there, and I came out and they said, we just wanted to know who the pretty Black woman was. And I said, well, her name's Jamie Cowen Esquire. That's who she is. But it's those sorts of things that, yes, we are batted down all the time, which then if you know me, Linda does, I get the bad label that we always get when we speak up for ourselves. Well, she must be angry. No, I'm not angry. I'm important. My voice is important, and you're going to hear it. But we get it all the time. Linda?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Jamie to a certain extent. I do think that, but on the same note, I do think that Jamie and I both are the type of advocates that we don't allow them to stop us. I would say that, yes, is it harder for us? Do we have to work twice as hard? Do we have to do more? Do we have to assert ourselves a little bit more? Yes, but do I think that both of us do that? I think we do. But I think that no matter what you do, like, for example, sometimes I'll go into court and the sheriffs will stop me and say, only lawyers are allowed up here. And I look at them like, well, okay, thank you.
On your skin color before you approach.
Right. So they just assume that I'm not an attorney. And so I have to walk past them anyway. And my colleagues, usually my white colleagues, will actually come to my defense and be like, why did you ask her, and stop her. But the fact of the matter is that I do feel like we have to assert ourselves. I think Jamie and I both have established a reputation for ourselves that people respect us to a certain extent. However, it took a lot to get here. And working in Adams County, I faced, as when I was a prosecutor, it was the good old boys club. And it was very much so, when I first started out, I came in and it was me and another DA. I'm not going to say his name, but he wasn't Black. Let's just put it that way. And we both were starting and doing trials at the same amount of time. I won all of my trials and he lost all of his trials, but yet he was still revered in the office for some reason. And he was held very highly. So I think that's why, the prosecutor's office really wasn't conducive to fostering our talents and honing our skills. I mean, we learned a lot from doing trial after trial, because I did a lot of trials as a prosecutor, which that was a good basis to have. But the politics of that office, it was very clear that, for example, I had one time where I told them I was leaving to go see Barack Obama before he even became president. And my chief at the time told me, if you would have said anybody else, then maybe I would let you go. But because of him, if you're trying to go see him, I'm not going to let you go. And I'll tell you afterwards who it is. But I think, when I was still in county court, who it was. Anyway, so I was very much at that point ready to leave anyway. I said, look, here's my paperwork. I'm putting in my hours. I'm taking this time off. And I left and I went anyway. But the fact that I had to even deal with that, and that's just something minor. And as a district attorney, there were a lot of things.
How many Black people, and then I want you to break it down as a male and female, were in that district attorney's office when you were there?
When I was there, me and
Linda and
James
I.
were the only two people. That was it. It was me and James.
Really?
One secretary.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
So not even support personnel were
One.
Black. You're kidding me. How are there any now that you both have left? Is it
There was one after us, Grant, and
And
unfortunately,
Danielle. There were two
okay,
after
two,
us.
two after
And
us.
then unfortunately Grant is
He,
no longer with us.
yeah.
okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Is Danielle still in the office? She's gone from that office as well. So technically they have no people of color. I shouldn't say people of color, Black women or men in that office.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Do you find that you experience bias from judges before you even really present your case, now that you're on the defense side? And did you experience that when you were on the prosecuting side?
Jamie,
From
you take this.
from my judges in Adams County, no.
Okay.
I
Um,
was gonna say the same thing.
I will say that that bench at that time and that bench at this time, but particularly at that time, was probably one of the best benches I've ever had the pleasure to practice in front of, and
Okay.
everything was level. And there were certain judges who called out the race issue to me personally, and had my back 100%. When I came out, though, found that a lot more in different jurisdictions, Arapahoe being one. That, yes, it was clearly that was the issue. And if race was an issue in a case and I brought it up, they would make my clients pay for it.
Yeah, which is so sad because Arapahoe County is largely populated by Black and brown people.
Well, right. But we need another show to talk about that, right? In terms of what goes on in Arapahoe and Aurora, period, and how they treat our Black and brown people
in the courts.
Because if you're a victim of a crime and you are Black or brown, you do not get the same level of service.
No.
The same sentences are not asked for, even though the crimes are horrific against us too, right? And so it makes it something we have to maneuver through. Luckily, the mother I had, I was taught they don't validate me. So I just stand in direct confrontation of it every time.
And don't seek their validation.
Oh no. I was in Aurora Muni and I had a city attorney. I entered my appearance and he's now a judge in Aurora Muni, but he was a city attorney at the time. And he said to me, "You're so well spoken." And I said, "I need a second, judge." And I put my hand over the microphone. And I said some not nice words that I will not repeat here. But I said I should be well spoken. Right. I have 2 degrees and passed the bar just like you did, except for I prosecuted murders and you prosecute speeding tickets. So anytime you want to talk about it. So now when I come in his courtroom, he recuses.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you were not telling your white counterpart that they were well spoken.
Right. That's like that underhanded side comment. You're such a benefit to your race. Who says that anymore? Right? You're such a credit to your race. Who says that? Linda, jump in there.
No, I'm happy to do so. I'm gonna tell you, with the judges in Adams County, I have to echo what she said. I loved my judges. When I was a prosecutor, the judges were very much on my side, and very much we had a great. I think I had great judges. Okay. However, since becoming a defense attorney, and that's the thing, you get judges who are pro prosecution, right? So there's bias in everything. But I did love my judges. I had great judges. But when I came to the defense side of it, I noticed that sometimes it felt like the prosecutor was sitting up on the bench. That's what it really seemed like. It seemed like the prosecutors were, the judges sometimes were worse than the prosecutors. And so you're not just fighting the prosecutor, you're also fighting against the judges. And that could be from filing motions, which I pride myself on filing good motions. Like, I don't just file frivolous motions. I file motions because there's a motion issue, a constitutional issue that needs to be litigated, and I know that there's an issue here. So when I file my motions, this one case that I had comes to mind quick. This woman, she said something to me about, she said, "Miss Lee, you're so aggressive." And I said, and she said, you're so aggressive. She said, I mean, I really like seeing Black women come into my courtroom. And then I was like, whoa, wait. First you said aggressive, then you said Black women come into my courtroom. This was in Arapahoe County. She was moved out of Arapahoe County. Now I think she's up in Douglas County. But um, she said, and she said, you're so aggressive. I like seeing Black women come into my courtroom, but maybe you should learn how to be a little more passive. And I said, for what? I said, for what? And then she ended up ruling against me on my motions issues, even though I was completely right. And there was a Court of Appeals case that actually came out and said it. So we were forced to go to trial. And I went to trial on a case where our defense was one that, you know, most people didn't think we would win, but we did, which, and the judge, thank you, but the judge called me up to the bench, but went before the verdict was read. And she said, Miss Lee, and she said, and the prosecutor, come on up here. And she called us up to the bench, and before she read the verdict, she said, I'm gonna read this verdict, but I don't want any noise, not one reaction, not a smile, not a laugh, nothing. And anybody who violates this, I will hold them in contempt of court and put you in jail right now. And I'm like, well, what? I said, yeah. That's what I was thinking. She must think I'm about to go crazy up in here because we got a guilty, but we didn't. So she robbed me of the opportunity to celebrate. My client, of course, was crying and happy. But I told him, like, don't cry. She's gonna put us in jail, you know. But she did everything she could all the way up to the last minute of that trial.
She would not have a Black woman celebrating that victory.
Because my defense, and I'm gonna tell you, my defense was that the officer planted drugs on my client. So she didn't believe that an officer would do that. And so the fact of the matter is that an officer, in fact, does it all the time, all across the country, and it happens. And when it does happen, then, you know, you need to be able to point that out. But you're not just fighting against the DA. You're not just fighting against the cops. The judge, and I told her, I said, Your Honor, with all due respect, if you believe that an officer would not do this, then you're biased, and you shouldn't be sitting on this case.
Right.
She did. Right. She just yelled at me after I said that. But the point is, when I called her out about her racist comment to me in the beginning about saying I'm a Black woman or a Black woman being aggressive or whatever she said, she's like, I'm not racist. I'm Native American. I have a card. And I said, you have a card? And I said, Your Honor, that's the problem, right? Like, you have to pull out a card to prove that you're Native American. I said, but when me and my client walk in this courtroom every single day, we don't need a card for you to see we're Black.
Right.
You don't need a card for that.
You know, if you just say you're not a racist, chances are you're defending the behavior that we've already seen that says you're a racist.
And how are you going to tell us what is or what is not racist? Yeah. You don't walk in our shoes.
Right. Exactly. And your behavior would line up. If you're not a racist, your behavior would line up with that. Your actions would show us that you're not a racist.
Let me tell you, the first judge I grew up in front of in Adams County, when I started, believe it or not, y'all, I used to talk like this and I used to talk real low. And he called me up to the bench and he said, Ms. Cowen, we both know you are not docile and you are not going to hide out in my courtroom. So until you learn how to project your voice, you will stand at that podium. And let me tell you, next couple trials, but that's what he was getting at, right? They want you to hide. They want you to be docile. That is not who you are.
That's right.
So let me take you guys to this, because I eventually do want to talk about our Supreme Court decision with Ketanji Brown, but I want to first wrap up this session with, you know, our numbers across the nation show that Black people have led the numbers in exonerations. So we know that the system is not working for us, and we end up spending decades behind bars, innocent. Lives taken away, youth taken away, are young, are coming out as old men, not able to procreate. I mean, it's really a form of genocide. They're not able to procreate because they're now older, they're in their 40s, they can't get good jobs. Can they even vote, and will they? What if you could see or have a real hand in true reform in our justice system? what would be the first thing you would tackle? Linda, Jamie, you talked about sentencing, and Linda, you talked about excessive. Do I have a switch? Excessive charging and sentencing. Where, where exactly would you put your talent in your hand if you could change something?
Jamie, you want to? I can jump in here. If I really had the ability, first of all, I believe that the whole prison system in itself is the problem, right?
Yeah.
So for that, for me, I deprivatize prisons, and I would like to see. I don't think they should be having private prisons, because
Across the nation, because we only have two
across
left here in Colorado, correct?
the nation, there shouldn't be any private prisons. And
Yep.
even when you look at the auditor's report on what the prisons are making here, I actually read up on this, an auditor's report on the prisons, what they're making in Colorado and how they need to make more money. And what that means is more crime or more arrest
Yep.
and more imprisonment, right? So to me, I look at the whole prison system as a new form of slavery. Just
It is.
that's what I look at it as. And if you look at the Constitution, that's exactly what they
How it's
said.
written. Yep.
The way it's written, they're saying that slavery doesn't exist unless you commit a crime, right? Slavery is abolished unless you commit a crime. That's the exception that nobody wants to talk about. But the fact of the matter is that the way that the prison system is being the way that they're making, I mean, it's a new slave. I mean, it's a new slavery system. To me, we need to get rid of the mandatory minimum sentencing. That's across the nation. That needs to happen. I had a case once, my first loss ever, and it was a heartbreaking case. And in that case, I had a case. It was they were supposed to get 20 or 60 or 65 years in prison. Luckily, I came up with an argument that it was consecutive sentencing, so it didn't happen. But it could be the evidence convicting them was identical, so they didn't actually have to do it consecutive. But there was law that I helped pass after that, to change the law so that now it reads if there's a robbery, because the judge was so devastated. The judge was like, I don't want to sentence him consecutively. I don't want to give this kid 65 years in prison. I don't want to do it, right? So, but the law says I have to do it. And now you find yourself in these sort of situations more often than not. You find yourself in a situation where the law is saying this is the minimum mandatory sentence, and it's extreme. It's not a small amount.
Right.
It used to be for each person present for a robbery. So if there were 6 people present, then that's 60 years, and 5 if there was a gun. So that's 65 years right there. That's what you're looking at, because 6 people were present. It don't matter if you only took $200. It doesn't matter. It depended how many people were present. So that is.
But if we get rid of minimums, we have to get rid of the judges that will impose maximum sentencing. You know what I mean? Like if we get rid of mandatory maximum, what is it? Minimums or maximums?
Mandatory minimums. Like minimums. So the minimum sentencing, that's really the problem, because you get people who are, so for each person present, they get a mandatory minimum, and it has to be consecutive sentencing.
But then you have those judges out there who will impose excessive sentencing. So there's such a fine balance where you take away one. Our current change and reform in the felony murder law, to me, is a prime example. Sure, especially for the juvenile sentencing. Sure, you took away first degree. It's no longer a first degree charge. However, now the minimum sentence is 16 to 48, whereas for a juvenile, it was life, but you had the possibility of parole at 40. Now the judge is just going to give 48-year sentences across the board. And we know how Arapahoe County likes to take 17, 16-year-olds, arrest them, create a felony, and then sentence these juveniles to these long, excessive sentences.
Right. Well, I think that depends. I think that depends on the judge. Not every judge is going to give 48 years, right? Not every judge is going to sentence to 48 years. And I also think that depends on, but ultimately that's where it comes down. But that's also depends on your lawyer, right? Is your lawyer getting you a stipulation to a minimum sentence or getting a cap so that you're not facing 48? I would never plead my client to 16 to 48. Like that just,
Okay.
I don't trust any judge well enough to do that.
Yep.
I don't know, Jamie, would you please your client to an open sentence like that?
No.
No way.
But I also think that sentencing and charging decisions come after what the real problem is, right? If we don't uproot the fact that supremacy is running police departments,
Yeah.
supremacy is running the legislature, it
Girl.
doesn't matter what we do in the courtroom because we're still fighting. Like you said, you had a valid motions issue that was not believed. I have had many, as in, oh, that's just what we throw out there. What we know because we live it and because others do not have to live our story.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Then, and I hate to sound like this, you guys are catching me at a time in my life in America where I am so upset with where we are.
Yeah.
And where we are not, that I don't even have a valid answer, Stephania, on how to fix it.
Right.
Because it's so embedded in the thought processes to everything that people do. So we might, like Stephania said, so we get rid of minimum mandatories. But if I still have that mindset, well, I'll fix that. I'll just give them 48 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there has to be some sort of demonstrated change at the bottom. But because they don't see us, it will never matter.
Yeah.
Because it's always, we're going to be fighting that battle from charging decision, from the stop. I think we spoke last time, Stephania, when I talked to you, and it still sits on my heart. What did Elijah McClain do wrong?
Yeah. Yep.
He walked home black. That's what he did wrong.
Right.
So when you're confronting that, right, every day.
Yeah.
How then we get to the court system? What are we doing on this end? How do we attack it on this end so that you and I, Linda, aren't beating our heads against the wall in court?
Well, one thing that I think that needs to happen is police officers need to be personally accountable for their behaviors in the if they're killing people, if they're doing police brutality, and they have their shield to hide behind, if they have the department's insurance to hide behind, and none of their property is getting taken, none of it, they can't be sued. They are basically bulletproof, Teflon Dawn over here. But yet we can't. But the law should be written in a way that it actually allows us to go after them personally. I guarantee you're going to have less accidents.
Absolutely.
When
we talked about them changing the people, I'm sorry, I'm losing my words. We've talked about that very thing with our legislators and allowing us to make them carry insurance. If you want a way to weed out the bad apples in the police department, get a third party. An insurance carrier is going to tell you, we can no longer insure you because you keep having claims where we're paying out. We're dropping you. If you can't have coverage, you can't work for the police department.
Well, I also think if we're getting rid of police officer immunity, we should get rid of district attorney immunity. I bet they'll think about how they're charging.
Yes.
If they can be held personally liable for because how hard is it, Linda, for us to prove prosecutorial misconduct? Because they'll always say prosecutorial discretion.
Exactly.
And I bet if they had to carry insurance, I have malpractice insurance, you have malpractice insurance, right? So I bet if they had to.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you, Stephania.
So many cogs in the wheel that make you right. And there's so many cogs in the wheel when you think about trying to reform and change things that you have to think about that next cog that's going to set off another wheel. Right. Linda, you talked about the jail system. And if we deprivatize jails, the problem is we deprivatize jails. But what do? We privatize what comes into the jail. So now everyone has to pay for phone service who's owned by Securus. And Securus is making money hand over fist. Bob Barker Industries that they have to pay. So an inmate now has to pay for that first pair of blues or oranges that they have to wear in there. They have to wear them, but they now have to pay for that. And there's an intake charge that they have to pay for. And then they have to pay for their soap, and then they have to pay for their toothbrush. And so that's a company that is benefiting and profiting from the inmate being in there. We deprivatize jails, but we privatize everything that comes in. Many possibilities you have to worry.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think it needs to be reformed from the top to the bottom. I mean,
I agree.
It's
100%.
It's something that, you know, and I'm very passionate about it. And I think the problem is that when you're in it every day and you see it like just literally affecting, and you might be like, okay, I can help this person, but I can't help the co-defendant. Like the co-defendant didn't get the same outcome as my client did. Or if you see it in your client is facing just injustice. I mean, really, that's why I go so hard in the paint against these prosecutors and against the judges if I have to. And that's because the fact of the matter is the whole system is built against the defendant.
Yeah.
The whole system is built against the defendant. And if you really start thinking about that, like even the presumption of innocence, they say you're presumed innocent, but
it's a fallacy.
It is. It's a fallacy.
Fallacy. It makes you feel better, right? To say that, you're innocent unless proven guilty, but now you got to postpone to get out and be on pretrial services.
Yes. Right. You're innocent, but you got to take UAs. You gotta you do all before you even get convicted. You gotta wear ankle monitor to be free.
Right.
Can't go
and
travel.
The burden is on the state, but it's not, because the state always gets the last word, especially in closing, especially in questioning. The burden is not on the state. The burden anymore.
But I think that is the attorney's duty to make the jury understand that burden and how heavy it is. That burden weighing down on the prosecutor's shoulder. It is important for I believe in jury selection, and that's why I used to teach a class called "Picking a Jury is Picking a Verdict." And I'm telling you, it is the most important part. And to me, like one of the things that I focus on is really focus on that reasonable doubt, presumption of innocence, and what that means. And relating it to, like, I'll talk about the Maury Povich show. I'll be like, you know, the girl on the show, she goes on there and she's like, Maury, I know he's the baby daddy. And I'll be like, is her word alone enough for the government to make this man pay child support? Is that enough? Or do you need more? Do you need evidence? What kind of evidence do you need? You know, and so going through those things in a real practical way to make people relate to it, I really believe the onus is on the defense attorney to make sure, and the judge has a duty to give a good voir dire. The judge has but you can't count on them. I think it's really on us, and that's really why this job is so taxing and stressful, because you have people's lives in your hands every day.
We're the only ones that read the Constitution. I mean, I've asked a lot of prosecutors. Have you read it? Do you know what it says? I know what it says
that way.
So white prosecutors or black prosecutors?
Any. Because here's the thing.
You're not reading it.
Here's what I will say to you. Yes. I have said this to a very good friend of mine that thought, oh, we had more black cops or we had more of this or more of that. And Linda can agree with this. Not all skin folk is kinfolk, Stephania.
That's
so
true.
Even with black prosecutors and black judges, we're fighting these same battles that we're fighting with our white counterparts.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because these black prosecutors don't want to go against the grain, right? They're not like, I'm gonna say, for example, myself and Jamie, when we were there, we went against the grain. We definitely went against the grain. I was, criticized for being I dismissed a bunch of cases because the cop told me that he pulled them over because they were Mexican driving in Commerce City and he knew they didn't have a license. And I dismissed the cases because I knew that was racist, and why wouldn't I dismiss it? So I did. Yeah. So I actually got in trouble for dismissing those cases. So I think that you have some people who are not going to do and act in the right way. You know, they just want to use their time and get along, because It really depends. It starts with the leadership at the top, and whether or not that leadership at the top, which is the elected DA, and that's why it's so critical that our people are out there voting.
Yep.
And out there making sure that we have somebody in office who's going to look out for our interests as for our community's interests.
But not as a pandering interest. Black lives mattered in that last election, right? They mattered. Did Black Lives Matter in the last DA election? Where are those lives now?
Behind bars.
They don't matter today.
Right.
So we also have to hold them accountable to what they say.
Yes, we do.
So we are looking at the intangibles, right? Character, integrity. What's your record? Not these words, not this lip service. I sat in on a lot of forums with Mac, and I would text him and say Black people. Everybody else is saying that. I know Black people. I know Black people. What does that mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just our Black and brown clients. Sorry, Stephania. It's a lot of it's across the board. Because if you are poor, I don't care what your race is, they're still treating you horribly.
That's true.
Yeah.
So there's, like I said, there are ways that we can do that. You actually all are giving me more positivity than I started this question with. So thank you. There are ways we can do this. But like I said, did you read the Constitution? Read the paper, read these words that matter. If we're doing that instead of focused on all these other things, the microscope I was under, and don't let it have been a Black defendant. Well, then you must have, because I did nothing. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. And they tell you, see, this is the hype dream that they give you when you become a prosecutor, right? They tell you, you're going to have discretion. You're going to have the ability to decide, because that's what I sure said when I came along interviewing there. And they told me, you will have discretion. You will have the ability to decide to do what's right, what's wrong, what you believe in your heart. All of that went out the window when you actually got sworn in as a DA. Now you have to follow what they say.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then again, you're going to be left out of this good old boys club that, maybe
it's the good cases.
Yeah. And I mean, and it wasn't just, and I have to speak to this, it wasn't just race. It was also women. Mm-hmm. The men there at the DA's office had a particular pass on certain things that the women just didn't have. Like I could see women working in that office who would be working twice as hard all the time, winning way more cases, way more trials, but yet they're not part of that good old boys club. That system is just, it was just embedded.
Old, it's archaic, it needs to go. And breaking these barriers and breaking these ceilings. I mean, we have to keep fighting, and it feels like we're fighting, and we take one step forward and 3 steps backwards here lately. I mean, thinking about our new Supreme Court nomination.
What was her LSAT score?
Right? Exactly.
What?
Right.
Right? I'm pretty sure she graduated from Harvard.
She went to Harvard.
Right. And then graduated law school cum laude. What, like, show us your SAT and ACT.
But did we expect anything different? Because here's the thing. Barack Obama was Harvard Law Review.
Yep.
And they treated him like he never went to school. Oh, wait, he wasn't born here, right? Right? That was the thing.
Oh, right.
I mean, it's insane. It doesn't
matter.
They
didn't ask for Amy Coney Barrett's LSATs. No, come on.
Or Gorsuch.
Right? Gorsuch, who... did you rate somebody or didn't you?
I would have not had a problem if they asked for Clarence Thomas's LSAT score, though. I would not have had a problem.
Hindsight.
Well, because Scalia probably took it for him. So,
and
sorry.
He loves Scalia.
Sorry, Scalia. But I'm just saying, they wouldn't ask that. Think of the questions you get asked, Linda, Stephania, all the time that you would never have to answer.
Really? And they wouldn't even think about asking your white male counterpart?
No.
Wow.
No. And that's from our own people. Can I say that too?
Yes.
I had a client once. I couldn't believe this actually happened. I had a client and I had a situation, let's just put it, where I was giving some advice and my client was a little unsure whether to take that advice or not. And then there was a white man walked past who was a lawyer as well. And he said the same thing I said. And then he said all of a sudden he was on board. And I'm looking like, are you serious? Like, I just said the same thing. So
It had to come from him, though, huh?
but you heard it from the white man, so I guess it's true.
Right. So it's law there.
Yeah.
It must be.
I mean, these things are reality. It doesn't mean that they're, and I don't want to make it seem like we're getting on here and we're just complaining about this and that or that. But we're speaking the truth. This is like real life, what we actually go through.
Yep.
With Black women, and in this area, practicing law. It's not all, it's not easy. There's different treatment that we have. And it's from the people in the system, and it could even be from a potential client or a client who may look at you differently because you are Black. And so
did you experience the same thing while you were in law school?
Oh, I DU 100%.
Really?
DU.
Not me. Not me. Law school, I'm good. I didn't have any.
Where did you go for law school?
DU.
DU. And you too, Jamie?
Yes.
You had issues, but Linda, you didn't.
Yes.
No.
And we had a professor, our property professor, that did a performance in blackface when I was at DU.
You gotta be kidding me.
Don't tell me. Who was it? Well, don't say it.
I'll tell you later.
Tell me later.
I'll tell you later. And the bad thing was I was at USD law school visiting, getting messages about it. And in his class, they would write coon lover on the attendance sheet that he took, and he said nothing. And then performed in blackface, and DU did nothing.
These are the ones that you need to expose. Let the community deal with him. If the school is not going to deal with him, let the community deal with him or her.
It was a him. He's no longer there.
Okay.
But,
okay, good.
I mean, and of course, I'm from San Diego going, what are we doing? Are we doing this? What are we doing? I'll come back right now. Because what are we doing?
Wow.
I didn't have any.
And I'm tired of the words tone deaf.
Yeah.
You're not tone deaf. You know it's inappropriate.
You're just trying it. You're trying it to see if you can get away with it.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that's not a tone deaf moment. Everybody knows that you don't do that. You wanted to push the envelope. You're trying to see if your privilege will give you a pass.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I completely agree with you. It's sad that we are seeing on our benches and even in our as our peers of the same color doing to us what they do to us.
Mm-hmm.
And it bothers me. I remember when certain big tech companies, not even tech, but manufacturer companies were giving scholarships to Black people who wanted to enter law or go to nursing, things like that. But then they take those scholarships, which are meant for African Americans, Black people. They go to school and then they get up there and they do to us what they do to what white people are doing to us. Why would you take that seat?
Right.
I mean, Ice Cube said
it's unfortunately, Stephania, sorry to cut you off. It's the game, right? They have instilled, and I go back to being so thankful for the mother I had. Is that luckily I had a mother who taught me who we were.
Yeah.
And no, that did not just include slavery.
Yeah.
Right. I was lucky to have that. So I knew us is first all the time.
Yeah.
Linda, I didn't even know Linda was applying. I seen Linda in victim witness in Adams County, and I was like, wait a minute. Girl, come to my office. Let me give you the rundown. Like,
and you know what though? When I saw Jamie, I first of all was so thankful to have another African American female there.
Me too.
But I didn't know that Jamie was going through the same things I was going through, right? Like I didn't know. I remember one day I saw her, and that's when I learned that, whoa, she's going through it just like I'm going through it. But Jamie always held herself in such a way where you just didn't know that she was going through it there with them.
But they knew when I left.
Did you leave your mark? Did you let them know?
Oh yes. I left a 2-page single-spaced exit memo on every person in administration's desk that started with, I was good enough to be your black face of Adams County and not good enough to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've got to stop just being the token. We need to make sure that we
have to make it known. And this is what I tell us all the time. And I know we get put in those spaces where they want us to be quiet. And we all have had things said to us, you don't know how to take it, so you shut down. Never let them shut you down. And especially, we are trial lawyers. We know better. Right?
And that's the real thing, is that when you have a trial lawyer, like when some people, they say they're trial lawyers and they go to one trial a year, or they really don't want to go to trial on the difficult trials, right? They're not really trial lawyers. They're really taking a deal. That's what they're doing, right? I hate taking deals. If I have to take a deal, I'm gonna do it, but I hate taking deals. I'd rather go to trial. But when you have that in you, and sometimes I think it's just, honestly, I think it's jealousy, that because there's a certain way that I think African Americans present in the courtroom that with that is just completely different. Okay. When I get in there, I start preaching. I'm a whole mess, okay, in the courtroom. And it is entertaining. The jury loves it. Judges, they don't understand because you're doing things differently. And I think sometimes when you're special like that, like Jamie definitely was at the DA's office.
Thank you.
She was literally one of the stars, But when you are special like that, I think that is when you're going to be attacked more, and you're going to deal with more of that.
Like my mom said, sorry to cut you off, they'll always remind you who you are, Linda. You learned that the hard way, right? I learned it the hard way. They will never let you forget. The fact that in 2022, we're still celebrating first after 400 plus years of captivity is already the problem.
Right.
We should no longer be celebrating first.
Well, we still have people like Clarence Thomas who even though they show him, remind him who he is, he thinks that he's not.
I met him. Really? We went to breakfast together. No, I think well, let me tell you. No, we went to breakfast together one day when I was in college. And I'm going to tell you what, he was trying to convince me why his reasoning, his way of thinking was correct. And he said that he wanted to, basically, he thought that when he was growing up, he was not, everybody was fighting to be equal and treated equally. And they weren't allowed to go to this water fountain. They weren't allowed to do this. So he's like, so there should be no affirmative action. Everybody should be treated equally because that's the way what we fought for. That's what, and I was like, but sitting there thinking like, but we're not treated equally. Right? Like, so you have to take into account where we actually are. And it just it's mind blowing to hear, he's a black man, but
I bet you he's doubled down on that as of today and still believes that.
Yes. Oh, girl. Yes.
Okay, ladies, we are coming up on towards the end of our show, and Jamie, I want to say thank you so much because you've mentioned your mother in this show several times, and we are in National Women's History Month. We are celebrating us as women, us as Black women. We know the things that we go through. We know the extra hurdles that we have to jump over. They are not the same. And not to say that that's bad, not to say that that's good, but we need to, our community, our government, our country needs to recognize it is not the same. And we go through a little bit more. We go through a lot more challenges, and still we come out on the other side.
Yes, we do.
What should anyone going into law, any Black woman going into law right now, take away from your experiences?
First and foremost, it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's needed. We bring to the whichever field of law it is, we bring to the practice of law a very unique perspective as Black women. We bring a voice and a strength as Black women and as the most forgotten woman on the planet, right? I have nieces who I am so proud to be their aunt, and that they can say this and that helps them, and any young girls can see that. So there is definitely a need. I would encourage more of us to go to law school, and normally I don't, because you got to be crazy to be a lawyer. However, there needs to be that voice, and that we need to be heard and keep up the fight, because that's what we were built to do. That's why we're still here.
Linda, what's your takeaway for anyone?
I mean, my takeaway is I have to echo what Jamie said, honestly. I think that as a Black woman who is practicing law, I think when I go into a courtroom, it's just a different perspective, a different way of addressing cases, a different way of analyzing a case, a different way of thinking about it, relating to, and also we serve a purpose. We are there. People feel comfortable knowing that they have an African-American attorney on their side, that they have somebody who can actually understand them. And that's going to fight for them. And the Black woman has been that type of woman, right? We hold it down for everybody. And when whether it's, I feel like I have no kids, but I feel like I got a million kids, because my clients basically become my kids. It's like, I got to fight for them. I can't allow them to go down. I'm not going to let it happen. And so I think that you get people who care more. I think a Black woman is going to care. It's not just another case or another name on a file. It's somebody that you want to fight for. And so, I think Jamie hit it on the head on the nail on the head.
It's unfortunate we don't have you two ladies on the bench, especially in Arapahoe, where you are so needed. We need that. I
don't want to be a judge, but
I know. I mean, that's a lot. That's crossing a different line. But let me tell you something. Your perspective and the Black female voice is absolutely needed on several benches across our country, and especially in our state.
Yes, in our state. I mean, yes, we need.
Yeah.
I agree, but I think at this point for both of us where we are, Stephania, that policy work is where our voices need to be for now, right?
Yeah.
And there's the Black
we can't do.
We have the Black Caucus. We have the Black legislatures. We're getting more and more Black legislatures. So I'd like to see us having a time to connect defense attorneys like us with those Black legislatures and giving them some real insight, so that they can start making some real policy changes.
Especially as these laws are changing. There's a law on the books now that affects the Stand My Ground law. Does it affect Black and brown people? Will it?
Should
we need to see that policy. Ladies, give us a dope Black thought. We always end with a dope Black thought. I know that I just asked you what was the takeaway for Black women going into law, but what is the takeaway for anything, our Black community? I love what you say, Linda, because my mother and my sister and I always joke that my mother was an intimidator growing up. And so we always say to each other, we can't be intimidated because we were raised by the great intimidator. So give us a dope Black thought before we leave. We have about 2 minutes left, so go ahead. You want to start this one off, Linda?
A dope Black thought. I don't know.
Anything. What subject would you like to talk about?
I would say a dope Black thought to me is about personal perseverance. Basically, being put in your mind. You could do whatever you put your mind to. That's what I would say. Basically, knowing that you got to work twice as hard, but doing it. That's it.
I love it. Jamie.
Remember that we are the Alpha and the Omega. It starts with us, it ends with us, and we are the end all to be all, and no one does it better than we do. So keep up the fight.
I love it.
My dope Black thought.
I love it. That is our dope. That is a dope Black thought from our dope Black women here during National Women's History Month. We love that you both have come on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You powerful beautiful Black women. Thank you for coming on. Congratulations on all you've done, and good luck in everything that you're gonna do. And this is Dope Black Thoughts out.
Thank you so much.
What is love? It's the drug. Later rotate,
get back in it. Calling me an Uber just to hit back. Hit the cash out like pay, I spend it. Is it really worth the wait? I don't get it.